All right. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, we're having a good 2026 here. My name is Swizz, and we're kicking it off with some good topics here tonight. First, some housekeeping things. I know it's been a bit since I had streamed and done a few of these videos here, so first and foremost, I'm going to apologize for the rust. But just kind of a few programming notes. I think what I'll probably do is I was doing two topics, one for this night and one for the next night. What I might actually do, I'm going to see how it kind of pans out. But I might just switch it just to have both topics in one night and stream through that. I know it's pretty short stream, so if I can kind of make it stretch for like an hour, that would be ideal if we can make it that. And then obviously after this is all done, I'll have the first topic uploaded the next night, and then the second topic is going to be uploaded usually the second night after that. So within 24 hours, this first video should be up, and then within 48, the second topic should be there on YouTube. There, if you haven't subscribed, make sure to do that as well. So enough chit chat. We'll get into our topics here, which for hopefully I think the stream is showing, but we're talking about taking back your power and attachment styles. So two good topics here that we'll review. I especially like this first one here because it's really related to empowerment, and especially one of the things that always goes hand in hand with empowerment is related to self-compassion. And there's a topic later on that we'll review about what self-esteem is, self-compassion, and finding the difference between the two. But what's important with this first topic here about taking back your power is that it's a great way to one of the first things we'll go into is recovery thinking. And I like that term there because it's a great way to regain that sort of, again, that power of how we're viewing ourselves and how we're viewing our situations into taking back that control, right? To me, I always like to use the narrative therapy approach in a sense where you're kind of, we have a story that has been written and we have the ability to, obviously keeping with facts, but be able to kind of reword it in a way that fits our narrative, right? As well as being able to just kind of personify the symptoms that we may be going through, right? Whether if it's depression, anxiety, or trauma, any of that nature, we can identify that those are the symptoms that may cause our reaction to these things, right? So that's the goal here is to go through these topics here, take back our power, and really be able to just kind of strengthen ourselves mentally here, right? So let's get into our worksheet here. We'll review a few things. We'll take a little break, and then we'll dive into attachment styles. And then that'll be our night. All right, let's pull up our stuff. And here we go. We are in our first area of recovery thinking. So again, the whole goal is to be able to reduce these trauma thoughts and utilize this recovery thought process to be able to recognize again what we're trying to recover from, right? So, with that being said, let's go through these trauma thoughts, these responses here, and we'll be able to kind of see was a way that we're trying to change the way that we view these situations, right? So let's go through a couple here. We have I'm worthless, want to cut my arm, especially if it's related to self-destructive. I'll always be alone. I am nothing. I'm bad. Bad relationships are all I get, and I can't cope. Just for some of the examples here to review, right? The goal that we want to get to is to get over here towards the recovery thoughts. So instead of thinking the I'm worthless, we want to say kind of I did that well to kind of build ourselves up. If we're thinking there's no point, life is what we make it, be able to kind of get to this thought as well too. I am nothing, I'm a decent person. Bad relationships are all I get. I can find good people. I can't cope, I can try. And you can see the differences between these two as well. Um, it's important to kind of recognize that. Now, obviously, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, "Oh well, like it's easier said than done," then you're correct, right? Like you're not just going to look at these kind of recovery thoughts and think, "Oh wow, all I have to do is say this and I'm good to go." The goal is to be able to get to the point where we can adjust our trauma response thoughts into our recovery thoughts. And that takes time. And we'll talk about kind of how to get there to be able to get to the point where we can use those recovery thoughts, right? One thing of that too, just before we kind of move forward with the trauma response thoughts, a lot of that is already kind of established throughout your childhood and development, right? Being able to have these particular experiences that have been really just kind of hammered into you, especially of if you are nothing or you're bad, right? If you had an abusive household where that parent would always tell you those things, what else are you going to believe at this time, right? So being able to really have that opportunity to provide a different insight may have never occurred. And that's where the ability to just kind of ultimately just kind of reassure you or just kind of recognize the past that you've come from, as well as kind of recognize the new future that we're trying to create, because we're providing this new information, this new thought that has never been established before, right? Your entire life, if this happens to be the case, where you're having those thoughts of you can't cope or you're bad or you're nothing in that sense as well, has been established throughout your entire life. So being able to provide this new information or this recovery thought of you're a decent person, it sounds foreign. It doesn't sound natural. And that's what we want to change. We want to change it so where it does feel natural, so it does feel that it does reflect you, right? And that you aren't defined by those trauma response thoughts. So let's get to how we can get to the point to these recovery thoughts and what actions we can do to get there. So a couple kind of rethinking tools we could do. Listing our options, so being able to kind of list the choices that we have, kind of what do I have available to do, right? That's kind of an easy thing to look at. What are my choices? What are my options? And the more that you can review these things, the easier it is to recognize, hey, you know what? I can do these things, right? So the example they give here is, oh, if David's feeling like a pathetic, like a loser, instead of putting himself down, being able to kind of like tell him, all right, let me make a list of what I can do that can, let's say, prevent that thought occurring, right? It's like, well, I can go to counseling, get a job, earn money, move out, see if you can live with a friend, apply for disability, move out, save them parents, but spend more time on my own, right? Especially if this, the example here is related to him being a loser because he's living with his parents, right? So being able to have these thoughts there, that thought there leads to the ability to create these different other possibilities. To list the options is what we're trying to do, and the more you're able to kind of remind yourself of these things, the better you can attribute. Like, well, here it's not hopeless. I have some strategies that I can do. Notice the source. We were just talking about this, right? Who is the person that's telling you this? Is it yourself? Is it someone in your past that's saying this, right? Take that time to kind of reflect about where that's coming from. The example they have here is Judy's aunt keeps telling her she was fat. Judy would get depressed and eat more until she began to see that being talked to that way was not okay and it was disrespectful. Recognizing that the person was an unhappy person who took out the pain and people around her, right? So being able to recognize these things of where is that source coming from is a great way to help you get into those recovery thoughts that you're looking for, right? The ones up here. Next one here, imagine. So imagery can be really helpful if you feel you're very kind of visual-esque associated with this. They had the example here of if you're having a panic attack, kind of visualize of what it's like for heart exploding, or it's a computer and hardwired solid. For you, this may make sense. Being able to create kind of a possible world, imagine what the future would be. There's a kind of a motivational interviewing technique that we do. It's about kind of like waving the magic wand. So if you could wave a magic wand and everything would be better and you would have the ideal solutions for everything, what would that look like, right? Being able to provide that possibility and to challenge yourself to think, hey, this is another alternative thought or another perspective we can look at. It's a great way to kind of challenge that person's thought, to know that what you're thinking right now is not the one-all be-all true thought, right? So next one here, praise yourself. I'm always big on self-affirmations, being able to kind of recognize those things that you did, even if it's the tiny little goals that you're working towards the bigger goal. the more recognition you can give yourself to, it's going to help you feel reassured that you are working towards something, right? Learning from experience, being able to kind of think about your past can be good. So a lot of the time we use the past to kind of help protect us for the future, right? If something bad happened, we're going to use that past of like, well, this happened to me. I got hurt this way, and I don't want to do it again because I might get hurt the same way, right? A lot of the time that happens because again, our brain and our body is trying to protect us. We also want to use that same kind of reaction in a positive sense, right? So if you've done something in the past that has been successful and you're in a similar situation, remind yourself of that. Hey, you did this before, it had turned out really well. What makes us say that we can't do it again? It's going to turn out well again, right? The reminding yourself of those things is key. Creating a new story, we talked about that, kind of utilizing that narrative approach. Thinking of the consequences, so pros and cons is another great way, kind of related to listing the options we had up here. A good resource there. Examine the evidence. I love this one here too. You want to check the facts. We'll talk about that later as well too. A lot of the time we develop these preconceived notions, especially if we're relating it to the past. We often tend to forego the facts of the situation. Remind yourself, what are the facts? What are the facts? Is that person really thinking that you're a terrible person in that sense? Or is it based on things that have happened in our past? We don't have any evidence to prove that person is judging us, right? What we have in front of us is the facts, and that's all we can make our decision off of, right? Brainstorming. So kind of planning ahead, developing these strategies is a great way to kind of do that. Finding these interpretations of negative situations. A lot of these can sound a little redundant. There's just slight variations to it. But essentially it's just kind of creating a list of, really it's a kind of listing options, different interpretations for it as well too. The impact. So this kind of relates to if you feel you often catastrophize a lot of situations. This is a great way to kind of utilize the decatastrophizing strategy to reduce the intensity of it. What is the real impact? What is the impact that this is going to have on ourself here, right? And the more we're able to kind of break it down, the better we'll be able to see that again we can break it. We can understand that it may not have an impact, right? Last but not least, a few things here. Sorry. Make a decision. Just trying to pick out kind of the imperfect road. If there's a fork in the road, kind of making a decision that you feel is going to work for you at the end of the day. That's all we can do. Remembering a better time, so think of the good times as well. Just like how we often use the past to think of the bad times, the good can also be mentioned here as well. Discover rules to live by. These are kind of like your cliche sayings or kind of your life mottos, your mantras to say. Principles that help you focus on recovery. So that's big. So hopefully those have been good. Getting to more kind of about the rethinking process here. Obviously, what we want to remind ourselves is that we're always thinking. Everyone's thinking, even when we're not aware for it. We're always trying to think about these things. So the goal is to become aware of this internal dialogue and to choose the thinking that helps you feel better, right? So not every one of those strategies is going to work for you, but you have to find the ones that work for you, and that's the ultimate goal, right? I think that's a lot of things that people kind of get bogged down is that they feel that they've tried everything. But a lot of time, there's a lot of other tools that they haven't tried. So knowing that there is a lot out there is key. I'm going to go on a little tangent here. I was talking to a client today about using coping skills and strategies, and he was interested in wanting to get medication. So I was telling this individual that the goal is, I always say the goal is to be able to learn the skills first and develop the coping skills. And if you feel that the coping skills haven't been impactful or that they are not being effective, then that's the key for medication, right? So the more that you do the skills, and if you feel like, hey, something biologically just isn't clicking, that's where that need for medication comes in. At least my kind of personal, professional opinion for that. Notice how thinking it kind of impacts your life. So The more it's kind of like that positive thinking leads to those positive outcomes in that sense, right? Being able to kind of remind yourself of these things to kind of help you keep yourself grounded and to keep about the situation, right? And I should have corrected myself. I shouldn't have said positive thinking, but realistic thinking. This thing right here, right? I think that's the important thing to think about is that we're not trying to fluff it up, right? We're trying to keep it realistic. And that can be hard to do because it may come off as being positive. And when you feel or think about things that are positive, we may think we're kind of whitewashing the negative side of it, right? But that's why it's important to kind of recognize that it's that realistic thinking that we're trying to do, right? Rethink is a profound emotional experience, right? It can be impactful, it can be very traumatic. I always encourage having that safe space. So if you are able to do that, it's really key because it's a great way to be able to kind of process those thoughts and feelings. Now, one thing of note too, and I've said these a couple times in the videos, is that when we are trying to do these strategies like the rethinking, I always like to bring in dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, because a lot of the time we may actually, these skills here may not be effective. And the reason why is because we might actually need to do something that is related to reducing the intensity of the emotions, right? So if we can reduce the intensity of those emotions, it may help us be able to, practice these skills here. So doing things like temperature control, deep breathing, things of that nature, get that intensity of emotion down. That will allow us to do these things here. Your thoughts are not wrong or bad. Again, it's not saying that it's yes or no. It's bad. It's just to me from a behavioral standpoint, that's where a lot of those thoughts may occur. Rethinking takes active practice. Again, it just is continuing to be learned like anything else. Just like I was saying earlier, if you've had that thought that you're a loser and that you're bad and you're terrible, and that has been reinforced throughout your entire life, it's how would you think of anything differently, right? It takes time, it takes practice. The more information that gets brought in, the easier it is to try to challenge it and break it down. So good. All right, last one here related to this is the personal bill of rights. This is my favorite here. I share this with clients, a few recently. A lot of the time, we may feel we're not deserving of certain things, right? And that's where this little tool comes into hand, is to remind ourselves that we have the right for these things. So I'll read through all 25 because I think they're all important. And if you can just kind of Google personal bill of rights. You can kind of look it up and have a copy yourself to remind you of these things, because again, it is important for sure. All right, so let's go through the first one here. I have the right to ask for what I want, and I have the right to say no to requests or demands I cannot meet. I have the right to express all my feelings, positive or negative. I have the right to change my mind. I have the right to make mistakes and not have to be perfect. I have the right to follow my own values and standards. I have the right to say no to anything when I feel I am not ready, it is unsafe, or it violates my values. I have the right to determine my own priorities. I have the right to not be responsible for others' behaviors, actions, feelings, or problems. I have the right to respect honesty from others. I have the right to be angry at someone I love. I have the right to be uniquely myself. I have the right to feel scared and say I'm afraid. I have the right to say I don't know. I have the right to not give excuses or reasons for my behavior. I have the right to make decisions based on my feelings. I have the right to my own needs for personal space and time. I have the right to be playful and frivolous. I have the right to be healthier than those around me. I have the right to be in a non-abusive environment. I have the right to make friends and be comfortable around people. I have the right to change and grow. I have the right to have my needs and wants respected by others. I have the right to be treated with dignity and respect. And I have the right to be happy. So what's interesting about this is, you may go through a few of these and think, oh, like even reading this, it doesn't apply to me, or I can't resonate with it. And it's understandable, right? Because if you've been told one way or the other to think like this is how you should behave or this is how you should feel, when you're reading that, it's not going to ring true to you. And that's where we want to get to the rethinking process, the ability to challenge those thoughts, reduce the intensity of emotions first, and then practice to challenge them. And it takes time, right? It takes time and practice, and the more that we can do it, the easier it will come to. So hopefully this was a good first session here about taking back your power. Like I said, I always love this one. I'm always for kind of that positive psychology and just providing that reassurance to yourself because you all have been through it for sure. And the more that we practice these skills here, the better we'll be at it. Okay? All right, so we'll take a few minutes here, and then we'll get into the next session here about attachment styles. Alrighty, thanks.